Today's session, I'm happy to introduce our speakers, Dr. Rory McGreal, the UNESCO Commonwealth of Learning Chair in Open Educational Resources from Athabasca University, Canada, who will be presenting on OER and mobile learning, and Dr. Wayne Mackintosh, the Director of the OER Foundation and Commonwealth of Learning Chair in OER at Otago Polytechnic, New Zealand, who will be presenting on the OER University, a sustainable model for more affordable education futures. I will now turn the mic over to Dr. McGreal to begin today's session. Rory?
Hi, Tracy. Could you turn over the slides? Yeah.
Okay, do you have them now, Rory?
Okay, I have the slides now, and I'm ready to start. I'm talking today about why we need open educational resources, especially for mobile learning. And I believe that the access to learning through mobile devices in uh, in the future, and even starting now in many cases, going to be essential for increasing accessibility to learning. A brief commercial. The UNESCO chairholders. We have two partners. My partner is Fred Mulder in the Open University of the Netherlands, and Dr. Mackintosh, who's speaking today, is a Commonwealth of Learning chairholder partnering with us, and we have some others that are on their way in different countries, particularly in Brazil and South Africa. Open educational resources have been defined by UNESCO as technology-enabled open provision of educational resources for consultation, use, and adaptation by a community of users for non-commercial purposes. Um, However, a more recent definition says that they could be any materials used to support education that may be freely accessed, reused, modified, and shared by anyone. And I think that's a more comprehensive decision. And UNESCO supports OER for development to help in developing countries in particular. And to do this, they wish to mobilize the whole of the worldwide community of educators. Remind you that the internet is the biggest intellectual commons of humanity. It belongs to all of us. And the public domain is a priceless shared heritage. It's Newton who said that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and all new knowledge is based on old knowledge. And the internet is allowing all this knowledge to come forward, and we need to share it. I want to talk now about uh, uh, mobile ubiquity and what's happening in the world. I'd start off with this story. I was in the Philippines island in 1999, and I was driving through a village with no electricity. And I slammed on the brakes because I could not believe what I saw. And there was a farmer in a field behind two oxen, up to his knees in a rice paddy, and he was digital messaging. That time, hardly anyone, if anyone, was digital messaging in Canada. And I found out later that the Philippines did more digital messaging per capita than any other country in the world. And I recently checked, and that still holds true. They do an incredible amount of digital messaging. And but what struck me when I was looking at it was when I looked at that phone, I realized that this wasn't just a phone, that this was a computer. And in fact, it was more powerful than the computer I had on my desktop just a few years earlier. And it was then that I started thinking about mobile learning and what we could do to reach and make learning accessible around the world using these devices. And what's happening since? There are now over 2 billion internet connections in the world out of a population of 7 billion people. 1/4 of the world's population accesses the internet. This is an incredible development. Oh, I'm afraid that the slides didn't show the statistics, but what I'll do is the statistics have just disappeared from those slides. But basically, what the statistics are showing is that the rate of access to mobile devices and the rate of access to the internet are increasing almost exponentially. And now over 90% of the world's population is covered by mobile signals. And more people are accessing the internet using mobile devices than through desktops and other means. And this is an even greater percentage in developing countries, where the normal way that people are accessing the internet is by using a mobile device. And so the world is going mobile. There are 4.5 billion mobile subscriptions, 1.5 billion mobile internet users. There's more time spent on the internet with mobile devices than with desktops. So people are thinking, well, maybe we should go to mobile learning, and maybe that's the future. In fact, I'm trying to impress on people that this world exists now, and it's growing very rapidly. It will exist even more next year and the year after, and so on.
Hi, Rory. Sorry to
One out
interrupt. This is Colin. I was just hoping you might turn up your microphone a little bit if possible. You can click click the right arrow beside the microphone and adjust mic volume and hopefully turn it up just a little bit. Thank you.
How's this? Is this louder?
I think that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good. And so, yes, 1 out of every 3 people only access the internet via mobile. And here's an example of some people in rural Africa who are accessing using their mobile phones. Now, you hear some people saying, well, isn't the internet a great thing for learning? And I would go even further than that and say that modern learning is not possible without the skills for accessing and using the internet. So anyone who talks about a modern university education without using the internet is deceiving people. It's very much part of what an educated person does in the modern world. So why do we need open education resources for mobile learning? Well, OER, they're reusable, as we know, repurposable, and they're interoperable. But with digital rights management, which is being laws on digital rights management are being passed around the world, and this push is being led by the United States and Europe. And digital licenses, they're restricting how we can reuse and repurpose content. I would refer to it, rather than digital rights management, as digital restrictions management, because when you buy proprietary content, you don't really buy it. What you do is you use it with an incredible number of restrictions. And here's some of them. If you buy an ebook from a proprietor, a textbook, whatever, you can't copy, paste, annotate, highlight. You can't text to speech. You can't format change. You cannot move the material from one computer to the other. You can't print it out. You can't move it geographically. If you buy a book in the United States and you move to Australia, they can go in and take it off your computer. You cannot use it after an expiry date that they put on. They quite often have 180-day limits or whatever, and your resale rights are no longer there. And so all of these rights that we need um, uh, to educate people are not possible if they have digital rights management on their equipment. So if you're thinking of buying something from a place like Audible or iTunes, remember this, that if you pirate something, it's yours for life. You can take it anywhere and it will always work. But if you buy a legitimate DRM lock media and you ever switch operating systems, your collection could be lost. And if you try to keep it, you'll be a criminal. So remember this, if you want a collection you can count on, pirate it. Hey, you'll be a criminal either way. And again, I am not here supporting pirating, but what I am doing is saying that with the digital rights management, um, people are going to end up being pirates whether they want to be or not, because devices are changing all the time, and you have a license for a book and you want to move it to your new device, and you can't do that. And if you break the digital lock, you're a criminal. So that's the world we're entering into. And the proprietors also would like to destroy your CD after one playing. So um, uh, people think, well, this is ridiculous, but in fact, a bill was actually introduced into the US Congress to allow for this, and luckily common sense prevailed and it didn't go anywhere. Now, with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in the United States, which is being copied, and the US is pushing very forcefully for most other countries to accept it, as are the European Union. And they make it illegal to circumvent protection mechanisms, or even criminal in some cases, and to even share the information on how to circumvent any protection messages. So if you buy an ebook and you want to use it on a separate device, and you want to change it and you know how to do that, if you break the lock to do that, even though you have a fair dealing right to do so, you will be a criminal. So with these digital licenses, not only do they support all of the restrictions in DRM, but they also put in these restrictions, that the owners have no liability, even if the product doesn't work. And I don't know how many people out in this group have read the digital licenses. Very few actually read them, and I don't blame them. I think the Apple license is 95 pages long. But I have looked at them, and this is what you're agreeing to. When you click on that digital license, you agree that the owners have no liability, even if the product doesn't work. You also agree that they can invade your computer without your permission in the future to do whatever they want on your computer. They can collect, you've agreed that they can collect and use your personal data, and that you have a privilege to use the product. You do not own it. And it's prohibited for you to show your content to others. In fact, some licenses say that if you show it to anyone else, your content, you must immediately remove it from your computer and notify them. And by clicking, you've agreed to do that. And what you also do is when you click, you must accept that you have no rights. In many countries, including Canada and the United States, we have fair dealing or fair use rights. But when you click on that license, you've agreed that you do not have these rights in using that particular content. Because of these restrictions, restrictive licenses, and restrictive protection measures, it becomes essential for us as educators to move to open textbooks where we can copy and paste, we can text to speech, we can hyperlink, format change, move our material, print it out, move it geographically. No expiry date. We can reuse, remix, mash it. And we retain our privacy and digital rights. So what I'm suggesting here is that as educators, we really cannot work with proprietary material. And that we really have to start considering how we're going to move to open education resources in order to maintain our ability to flexibly teach our students. Open textbooks are essential for pervasive learning implementations. This isn't a sort of a wish list. I believe it's true. I believe that we will not be able to operate under these restrictive conditions as educators. Now, copyright, it used to be that it didn't apply to many things, and few people were affected. But today it touches everyone. Every time you write an email, there's copyright. You can hardly spend an hour without copyright. Everything triggers copyright in the modern world. Access rights, and this is the key, is that the vendors are no longer happy with just selling you a product. What they want to do is sell you a product and then control how, when, where, and with what specific technology that you use. They want to control everything about how you use their product. It's a new concept. If you remember, we used to live in a world where you buy something and you get it. You remember you see it on pizza place signs, buy one, get one free. Well, now you buy, you don't get anything free. You don't even get what you buy for. And this is a very new concept, but it seems to be the prevalent one in purchasing digital resources nowadays. You buy, but you don't get it. And I'm sure many of you have seen this one. We see it in Canada quite a bit from certain American videos on YouTube. That they restrict which countries you can do it. And this for Athabasca University, this is a particular problem because we have students in 85 countries, and if we want to use a YouTube video or something else to make a point in a class or whatever, many of the students won't be able to access it. So we have to move to open educational resources and open courseware, open source implementations, etc. And there's some examples of them. And Cory Doctorow reminds us that corporations, governments, every vested monopoly is worried about the disruptive power of computing. Well, this is an interesting backward slide. I don't know how that one happened. But the Royal Society in Britain is the oldest scientific society in the world. And they basically come out against the restrictive use of copyright and patents, saying that it unduly hampers scientific endeavors. And even Pope Benedict, he came out and he said, on the part of rich countries, there is excessive zeal for protecting knowledge through an unduly rigid assertion of the right to intellectual property. And what does this tell us? That God is on our side. Not only is God on our side, but with the Royal Society, science too is on our side. So we have reason to be optimistic. And I'll finish off with this statement from General Shinseki of the US Army, is if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And with that, I'll stop for questions, or maybe it'll be after, maybe Wayne will be starting now. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Roy. I think we'll head right into Wayne's presentation and then maybe take some questions at the end. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings from New Zealand. As Rory intimated earlier in the session in the chat box, from our geographical perspective, we're in the very fortunate position of having seen the future, which has already happened. And I can assure you that your Tuesday is going to be just wonderful. To everyone here, happy Open Access Week. It's great to join Athabasca University again to celebrate Open Access Week 2012. And at that point, I do want to recognize an outstanding open education pioneer, Athabasca University. Athabasca University was, in fact, the first single-mode open distance learning teaching institution, to the best of my knowledge, the first university in the world to implement an open access academic press. And of course, Athabasca University is one of the first founding anchor partners of the OER University initiative. A little bit about ourselves at the OER Foundation. We're an independent non-profit entity that provides leadership, international networking, and support to education institutions around the world to achieve their strategic objectives through the use of open education methods and resources. We administer two flagship initiatives, the Wiki Educator Project, which is a collaboration aiming to change the digital divide into digital dividends. There are more than 40,000 educators, largely from the formal education sector, collaborating at the heart of the education endeavor, and that is to share knowledge freely. Our other flagship initiative is, of course, the OER Tertiary Education Network, the network of institutions around the world who are establishing the Open Education Resource University. As of today, we have 20 contributing members from 5 continents, and this is a network that will be able to accredit OER learning maps to national qualification frameworks with a substantive footprint in 20 different countries. And so the question often asked in open education circles is, how do we achieve sustainable OER projects? And to be quite honest, if we treat OER as an add-on to existing operations, indeed it will be difficult to find revenue sources to sustain open education projects. The approach that we are taking with the OER University is to turn the tables a little and integrate the work we are doing into mainstream operations. And so the question now becomes, how will your institution remain sustainable without OER? And just to illustrate this in terms of the cost of tuition, the average cost of tuition for a 4-year degree from a public university in the United States of America is just over $26,000. By comparison, a full degree, 4-year degree at Otago Polytechnic with full tuition fees is around about 19,000 US dollars. However, with the launch of our first OERU pilot course at the current pricing levels that the University of Southern Queensland have established for the assessment-only services, we could provide a full degree for just over 6,000 US dollars. So for those of you worrying about the adoption of open education resources at your institutions, I can tell you we are the competition on your doorstep. The Vice Chancellor at the University of Southern Queensland has remarked that they are proud that their cost has now been removed as a barrier to learning. At the onset, I must emphasize that the OER University project is a philanthropic initiative. Our mission is not to undermine existing universities, but rather to build a parallel learning universe that can augment and help sustain our institutions of higher education. The approach that we're using is one of smart philanthropy, because the experience and the efficiencies we gain through the OER University model can be plowed back into mainstream operations on campus. The concept is a simple one. We are going to provide free learning opportunities for all students worldwide using courses which are based solely on open education resources. It is indeed possible with the advent of social media technology and a range of other technologies that we can build a sustainable network of academic volunteers international. And our anchor partners will be able to provide assessment and credentialing services on a fee-for-service basis so that OERU students can attain credible degrees. So what are the driving forces and economic fundamentals underpinning the OERU? Researchers at UNESCO and the Commonwealth of Learning predict that we need to provide for an additional 100 million places in tertiary education over the next 15 years. And you can do the mental math around that. It's equivalent of building 4 sizable universities of 30,000 students each every week for the next 15 years. And to be quite honest, it's highly unlikely that the traditional system is going to be able to respond to this demand. So what about the business of open? How much is it going to cost and who is going to pay? Again, this is not rocket science. There are 2 significant cost levers for the OER University initiative. The cost of replicating digital OERs is near zero. We also know that if 10 institutions, for example, collaborate on the design and development of high-quality learning materials, it's going to be far cheaper than trying to do it alone. And with this in mind, early in February 2011, a group of interested persons came together to discuss the concept of the Open Education Resource University. And with funding support from UNESCO, we were able to stream the meeting live on the internet with back channels for participation from interested people around the world. And at that meeting, we discussed a high-level logic model for the implementation of the OER University. And in short, this is what the model looked like. There are a number of services where it makes sense for us to collaborate and to do this openly. Things like open curriculum, open design and development, open pedagogy, and open student support. We can do collaboratively at no cost to the learner. There are a number of services where it makes sense for education institutions to provide, and including things like open assessment and open credentialing services. Of course, we can share an open source software infrastructure across the network. So indeed, it is possible through disaggregation to provide a number of services at no cost to the learner, and then those services which carry cost at institutions to provide those on a fee-for-service basis. I must point that the foundation on which we are building the OER University is quality. there has to be parity of esteem between the credentials earned through the OER university model and their equivalents on campus. We then proceeded to recruit the founding anchor partners, and in November that year, or the November of the same year, we hosted the first meeting of founding anchor partners. And at that meeting, we decided on the inaugural credential. We decided to commence the development of a number of prototype courses, aiming for the formal launch, international launch of the OER University in 2013, and you can mark that date in your calendars. The formal launch will be on the 8th of November in 2013. So looking at the institutional perspective of the OER University, and this is a concept that was developed by Judith Murray. Under the conventional model, your faculty or educators are teaching your courses to your students to receive your credential. Whereas under the OER university model, this parallel learning universe, it is feasible that any academic volunteers can teach any OER materials to any students in order to receive your institution's credential. So how does this work? What are the rules of the game of the anchor partners who join our institution? Our anchor partners agree that they will provide credentialing services for selected courses on a fee-for-service or cost recovery basis. Our partners agree to assemble a minimum of 2 courses from existing open education resources, and at current institutional membership levels, for the 2 courses that an institution assembles, they will be getting 38 in return, and that's a pretty good deal. Our anchor partners agree, as far as possible, for credit transfer of courses within the network. And of course, we need to sustain the central infrastructure, and our anchor partners join the OER Foundation as gold or silver members. So what are the mechanics of the OER University? The OER University itself does not confer degrees, our anchor partners do. What is very important in our model is that our anchor partners retain decision-making autonomy. They determine the pricing levels for the credentialing services, and they decide which courses would be transferred within the network under local matriculation requirements. So, for example, some institutions have higher matriculation requirements in terms of the percentage of courses which have to be completed at the conferring institution in order to earn a degree, whereas other institutions like Athabasca University have far more liberal matriculation requirements, and I suspect that those institutions that have far more open systems are likely to be more successful in this network. Another very significant feature of the OER University model is that we do not expect our partners to implement new policies. We are trying to operate the network within existing policies. And many of our institutions already have existing protocols for the operation of a model like this. And a good example of that would be the policies around recognition of prior learning, which would enable us to credential this kind of learning. So we've made quite a bit of progress thus far. Our first prototype course has been completed. It was a course developed by the University of Southern Queensland, a first year level course in regional relations in Asia and the Pacific. And Jim Taylor has played a significant role in designing the pedagogy for this particular course, which he calls free-range learning. And so the idea behind the course is that learners will be able to navigate a whole range of OERs that are and open access resources which are available on the web around structured e-learning activities. There's a regional relations database where learners collect and reflect on the resources that they've found. And the course is designed in such a way that it's a course-based portfolio centered around 3 assignments. And in this particular course, what will happen is learners will pay a nominal assessment fee for each of the 3 assignments. And in this particular iteration, the first assignment will cost 50 Australian dollars, the second assignment 50 Australian dollars, and the final assignment will be 100 Australian dollars. So for at a total cost of 200 Australian dollars, learners will be able to receive formal assessment towards the credits for the course within the network. A quick overview of the learning environment we've implemented for the first prototype course. You'll see a number of MOOC-like features in the model. Our learning resources, we develop them collaboratively in the wiki, which makes it very easy to integrate and replicate in any learning management system. So this gives the advantage for our anchor partners to run local versions in parallel with courses on campus. We also make use of a number of interaction tools. We will be utilizing a community-based question and answer forum, not unlike Stack Exchange, but an open source version thereof. Any learner will be able to ask questions. Any learner, in fact, will be able to respond to questions. And good questions are voted up by the community, and so good answers are also voted up by the community. And so with large cohorts of learners, we can build quite an impressive level of peer learning support. I mean, if you think about this practically, in a course of 2,000 or 3,000 learners, it is reasonable to assume that 2 or 3 of the learners actually might know the answers to some of the questions that others are experiencing. We also make extensive use of microblogs and blogging, as well as discussion forums, which could be any discussion forum. And as in the case of many of the MOOCs and the technologies developed by Stephen Downes, we aggregate the RSS feed into a timeline, and this is how we've designed the system to deliver courses, and it has been designed to be able to scale for thousands of learners. So basically, in wrapping up, we are building an innovative system. From the institution's perspective, no new money is required. The operational costs, the recurrent costs, are guaranteed through a fee for service. And for these reasons, the OERU is a low cost, low risk, but high impact innovation. And in conclusion, if you're worrying about this being theoretical speculation, no need to concern yourselves anymore. We are implementing the OER University, and we will provide free learning opportunities for all students worldwide. And folk, I thank you very much for your attention and look forward to your questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. McGreal and Dr. Mackintosh, for very informative presentations. These presentations and others will be made available on the Open Access Week website. We have about 15 or 20 minutes for questions. Before we begin, though, I'd like to say that today's lucky virtual door prize winners are Bill McMullen from NATE and Jian Ping. Please send your mailing addresses to my email address, which I will put in the chat box right now. So if we have any questions, we can please add them into the chat box, and Wayne and Rory will answer your questions. So Tony, did you have the question about China and the OER movement directed to anyone in particular? Was it for Rory or Wayne, or for either one of them?
Yeah, Tony, I'm not up on the open education resource movement in China, other than to say that up to now they really um, have not been that concerned about copyright, and uh, and so there's been a lot of using whatever material is available, and um, so I don't know if it's become a real issue there yet. But again, you'd have to have somebody in China noting. In um, in Hong Kong, however, there's very strict copyright protection now as compared to what it used to be. And again, that's comparative strictness, which you probably could still find pirated material there, but they're very much um, trying to eradicate it and follow the American example.
Okay, thanks, Rory. I see that Bill has a question here for Wayne. What is the most common reason given for institutions for not joining the OERU?
Yeah, a very good question. Thank you very much. Um, the two dominant reasons that are given by institutions for not joining the OERU collaboration are two red herrings. Um, the first red herring is the sky is going to fall down. And what this refers to is institutions that are concerned about losing student numbers by opening up course materials. Um, in fact, if we look at the research data, there is no substantive research uh, which suggests that institutions are going to lose student numbers by virtue of opening up their courses. And I put it to institutions that if they are afraid of losing student numbers, by the content they're teaching, they should be worried, because if that is the value which they're adding or providing to learners, you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to provide a far better deal, because all our courses will be open, and we will be building value around other services. The other red herring which we often hear is a reference or a concern about the quality of open education resources. And it's a red herring because if you and I as educators are the individuals developing these resources, who are we going to blame for poor quality? Um, in reference to that question, I can tell you the top reasons as to why the anchor partners have joined the OERU. We've conducted an extensive context evaluation, surveying well over 120 institutions from 80 different countries. And with reference to the questions asked to the OERU anchor partners, we asked our partners, what are the top reasons why you joined the network? And the top three ranking reasons why institutions have joined the OERU are: first, to be part of an international network. And indeed, the OER University is the first international network that has agreed to accredit OER learning. The second ranked reason is the philanthropic reason. In other words, widening access to education to learners who have been excluded from the education sector. But the third reason is a very interesting one, and that is to retain competitive advantage as OER becomes mainstream on our campuses around the world. So I hope that addresses your question.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Wayne. I believe this question is directed for you, Rory. Pauline wants to know, are there examples of OERs operating on mobile phones?
Um, right now, we have one, and Tony Tin and Muhammad Ali at Athabasca. We developed one in English second language course for mobile phones, and to be used on even low-end mobile phones. And we're developing another one now, English language for computer technologies, and that should be available in the spring. But no, people aren't, and um, I don't think people have woke up and smelt the coffee yet. they're still designing for desktops, and students aren't using desktops anymore. They're using tablets and netbooks and laptops, different types of devices. And so what we think may happen, however, is that if you put flexible design into your websites, they will work on smartphones. They won't work on the low-end mobile phones, but they'll work on smartphones. And I would think that the world is going to the we're now going to fourth generation smartphones, but even in Africa, they're moving now to second generation smartphones. So more and more power will be in these devices. And again, when we're talking about mobile technologies, we're talking also about tablets and small netbooks, and even now there's phones that are almost as big as a tablet, and tablets almost as small as a phone. So um, things are changing very rapidly. But what we need to do as educators is to recognize this phenomenon, that this is what's happening, and design our courses and lessons appropriately for this new medium.
Thank you, Rory. That was excellent. We have a question here from Stella Bastone. Hello, Stella. She would like to know, do you anticipate some counter movement from publishers and other for-profit entities? Are they retrofitting their business plans to stay competitive with OER endeavors? Stella, did you want Rory or Wayne or anyone in particular to answer that? I see she's typing here, so either would be great. So
Okay, what I could say is that yes, they are. In fact, they're looking at new business models, and for example, Pearson now are heavily invested into testing centers and into partnerships with other universities, and even creating their own university. So yes, they are moving. They will adapt to it. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm not particularly against the publishers making money. I'm just against them making huge amounts of money based on these old business models of change the edition every 2 years and charge people more money for it, and make sure they can't resell their book because the new edition is needed, and these type of non-uncompetitive practices. And my belief is that publishers will adjust to it and bring down their prices so as they will be competitive with open educational resources. And we see that happening now with some of the new publishers coming out where their business model is based on using open educational resources. Companies like Flat World Knowledge and others.
I can possibly just add to that. I mean, speaking from the non-profit sector, I have to say that we're not in the business of figuring out how to make money for the for-profit sector. But by the same token, we are not in any way opposed to any commercial entity making money through value-added services using open education resources. In fact, that would be a benefit to the ecosystem. But the world has fundamentally changed. I mean, a very good example that we will all be familiar with is digital photography. You would all recall Kodachrome, which used to be a world market leader in the sale of color film. And in 2009, Kodachrome ceased production and sale of color film. But the interesting thing with that example is that the principles of photography haven't changed. It's just that the way we do it has changed. And similarly with initiatives like the OER University, we will have an impact on the market. Our mission is to provide more affordable access to high quality qualifications. And within the for-profit sector, institutions that don't move forward by providing value-added services at competitive prices. I mean, as students will vote with their feet, they're going to go to where they're going to get the best quality learning at the cheapest price. And using OER, we will have competitive advantage.
Okay, and to follow up with that, there's a question here for you, Wayne, from Jennifer Madrell. Could you please describe the potential or existing interfaces between OER University and non-degree granting partners, the Saylor Foundation, or even the Coursera's of the world?
Sorry there for a moment, I had my microphone muted. Oh, the relationship between the OER University collaboration and the Saylor Foundation is a very good one. In fact, one of our prototype courses is a Saylor Foundation course that was developed, which we are repackaging for the OER University model, and in fact adding value to those course materials through the pedagogical enhancements that we are implementing, and which of course is released back freely for the benefit of the Saylor Foundation and any other institution that wants to do that. So in the case of the Saylor Foundation, it is interesting as an organization themselves. They are not an accredited institution, and so they have partnerships with institutions like Excelsior, who through Pearson's provide credit for exam models as a mechanism for getting credit. I mean, the difference between the OER University model is that each of our anchor partners are accredited institutions within their own jurisdictions. If we look at Coursera, Coursera is not an OER initiative. The materials are all rights reserved. Institutions do not have the right to modify, adapt, or improve those resources. Coursera, as well, it does not provide university academic credit under the standard model. Some institutions are exploring how they might be able to accredit learning from students who have taken Coursera courses, and that's healthy for the ecosystem. I mean, if Coursera is providing high quality courses that map to university credentials, and learners can learn from this, and institutions can accredit it, I mean, that's fantastic. We have a far more efficient system to support access to learning.
Okay, thanks very much, Wayne. Do we have any more questions? Okay, I don't see anyone typing, so I believe we will end today's session then. So I'd like to once again thank Dr. McGreal and Dr. Mackintosh for excellent presentations, and remind everyone that Athabasca University's Open Access Week noon hour presentations will continue throughout this week, so please join us here tomorrow. Same time, same place for the rest of the week. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much.